They're wild caught, you know, and it's not. You could pick up any number of animal trade magazines and find numerous ads for wild caught birds in the United States. And we're not talking about a species that you can breed like a dog or a cat. There are major limitations on them. And we're talking about millions of birds for sale in the United States. And so what I think you may see eventually is that those number of birds for sale dwindles dramatically, because only those that are truly captive bred and can obtain permits will be selling them.
Well, and I did some research about the hyacinth macaw, which is, of course, every parrot owner's dream.
Right.
And the people who breed them that I've interviewed are painstaking care of these birds, because they're so large and so sensitive. And I've really seen some very impressive operations. And one of the reasons the bird is such a high commodity is because of its sensitive nature and its ability to bond with humans. And but there's a lot of scam artists out there. So, I mean, I went on the internet and was just appalled at what I found.
Mm-hmm.
And people just saying posting photos of hyacinths, well, send me $500 and I'll send you the bird. I can't imagine how many people get ripped off that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what you're saying is certainly true. I've seen those ads, and certainly they're all over the internet as well.
Yeah.
Not just in the Trade Bird magazine. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
or on Craigslist.
Yeah.
You know, text me money and it's all, you know.
And you may not even get what you're paying for.
Oh,
you
you
may be
never
getting
do.
something else.
No, you've never get
And the chances that they were poached is high. So yeah.
And I think one of the things I think that truly responsible breeders would welcome is to get rid of some of these people
Mm-hmm.
who really give them a bad name,
Mm-hmm.
because there are people, like I say, who are very responsible.
You know, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm personally torn on this.
Mm-hmm.
As a lawyer side, I respect that the Endangered Species Act has provisions that will make responsible breeding possible, and certainly that is the state of the law, and that it is very possible that there will be a number of breeders who will obtain these Section 10 permits, and there will continue to be a supply, although probably a diminished supply of these animals. That probably raise the cost. That's going to be an issue. On the other hand, though, going back to they're not dogs and they're not cats, well, they're not not just because dogs and cats can breed without our help, right? But that, you know, these animals were intended to be free. And, you know, another thing that listing these species might do is to remove the stigma, or the sort of the, what's the word I'm trying to think of? When an animal is sold like a dog or a cat, people come to think of it like a dog or a cat. Maybe there'll be some realization now, if these animals are given these protections, that in some areas of the community that may have purchased it like a dog or cat, but wait a second. I don't really realize where these animals are coming from. And, you know, this bird is never going to fly free, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what it was intended or put to do. And you know, we could go back and talk about dogs and cats, but their history is not the same history as these animals. They don't have the history of captivity that domestic animals do. And so on that side of it, I would like to see the Endangered Species Act reduce the demand, not just because it limits the number of illegally imported species, but also because people maybe take a little bit more thought in the process of whether they want to purchase.
Well, and
animal.
I think we're seeing some of that right now. I mean, there's the rescues. There are a lot of bird rescues and shelters that are just full of birds, and that people, you know, they go and they see that cute little cockatoo in the window, and they can't and they get it home, and it is not
right?
a dog or cat.
And live 70 years.
Yep. Well, and not only that, the cockatoo's voice can be heard a mile.
Yeah.
And they bite.
Yep.
Hard. And so I think people are, you know, this is part of the education process for the public. You know, if you want to get a parrot, fine, but and I know, have you ever heard of Gabriel's Foundation?
No.
Gabriel's Foundation, it's down in Parker and here in downtown Denver. It is a bird rescue organization and a kind of a shelter and a long-term boarding facility. And they kind of sit in the middle of the road of this battle between the breeders and you know, the folks who want the birds to fly free. And it really would, I think, behoove you to check them out. Do you know who Pat Craig is in the animal sanctuary, the big game sanctuary down
In Colorado, down by
Yeah,
Colorado Springs?
yeah, well, it's close to the springs.
Yeah, I know where that.
But he rescues lions, tigers, and
Right.
bears.
Yeah, we've had wolves actually from his
Yeah,
facility.
wolves as well, yeah.
Mhm.
So she is, that, the woman who runs the shelter is two birds is what he is to those big cats. So
Mhm.
she's got quite a few species.
Right. Well, then that's important. I mean, for groups like Friends of Animals, right? They have two priorities, and people often like to say that they're conflicting priorities, but they're not. One, of course, is to the current birds and species that are in captivity, and one is to make sure that those animals are taken care of. The other, of course, is the future generations, and to make sure they're never captive in the first place, or if they are, they're done so for different reasons. And so, you know, Friends of Animals runs their own sanctuaries, particularly for primates. But at the same time, you know, they would like to see primates not in captivity, and that would be the ultimate. And I think that, you know, that's why the bird petition, you know, on one hand, the law will allow it. There's no doubt about it. It's just going to be in a different way than it is today. And then on the other hand, listing, as we were discussing, does provide educational opportunities for the general public, particularly for those who are buying them, you know, not so much because, you know, they have a history with birds, whether that's, you know, in their family or simply as, you know, a type of hobby that they've developed, or some type of, well, we've always looked at birds over dogs for companions, they live longer, we don't have to worry about the deaths, that type of thing. Particularly for those who write, as you said, just see it as, well, this is an interesting thing for the kids, or I've never done this before, but it sounds like something that I would be interested in. You know, maybe by going down and having to see that these species are protected and have restrictions on them, it might change the market.
Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm good. Hope that was helpful.
Very helpful.